Welcome, everyone. My name is Charity Rouse, and I'm the Director of Local History for the Spartanburg County Public Library System. And it is my delight to be with you tonight in our genealogy series. We are recording this to be placed on our library's YouTube page. It will be in the genealogy playlist. If you have missed any of the previous year's recordings, most all of the genealogy programs I have done since mid 2020 are on that playlist. So you can listen to a lot of different topics and a lot of different varieties of presentations there. But we're glad that you've joined us tonight. We have folks who are local and folks from around the country, and we appreciate your support of this series. So tonight we're going to talk about connecting descendants with enslaved ancestors, resources for research, places that we can find names of enslaved, and how we can help connect some of the pieces. And let's see. I always love it when the computer doesn't respond. Okay, here we go. So from grassroots projects and personal research to large initiatives like 10 Million Names, connecting descendants of the enslaved to their pre-1870 ancestors is something we can all contribute our knowledge to. How often have you encountered the name of an enslaved person in your research? How can that information be shared with others? So there are lots of different projects for this. And some are more active than others. Some have been active in the past. Some are just becoming active. And we're going to look at a number of projects that are in each of these categories. So do check for local projects. Your libraries, museums, genealogy, or historical societies may have projects that they are working on that may or may not be online. And so it's always good to check local to you as well as local to where your ancestors might have been. There are personal projects that accept and share information, and some of these have websites. And some of these may be more regional in nature, but again, it's a good thing to look for. State level projects, so many state libraries and archives, genealogy, or historical societies are working to at least add metadata and indexing for the enslaved in the records. The enslaved have often been hiding in plain sight because when you only index the primary buyer and seller of a deed, or the names of the people who are inheriting in a will, but not the enslaved who are listed as property, you're missing a lot of valuable genealogical information. And so the state level projects are working to rectify a lot of that. National level projects, large museums, National Archives, American Ancestors, is in New England, but they cover the US. Large museums would be like the International African American Museum in Charleston, or the Smithsonian, oh shoot, I can't remember the order of the words, but the African American History and Culture Museum. Don't quote me on the order of that. Anyway. And then there are university-sponsored sites for research. Research universities often have these large multidisciplinary humanities programs that have ended up getting grants from a lot of the public and private grant foundations to get the research online. And so you'll see a couple of those in the project. And because they do not act specifically in the genealogy world, we may forget to look for them. So don't just look for genealogy sites. Some of these are only drawn from the collections they hold, but others allow crowdsourcing. So it will depend on the project and the scope. Sometimes you can contact the coordinator of the project and find out more information than is online for what's happening. So, where can you find the names of the enslaved? These are some larger projects where you can do research. So this is one of the state organizations, because I'm in Spartanburg. I do a lot of South Carolina resources, but that does not mean that these are the only places. So if you have ancestors in another state, particularly in one of the historically slaveholding states, although New England were slaveholders too. So you're going to find early records in the Northeast and down the upper Atlantic coast there. Not just the traditional 15 slave states. So, but this is the South Carolina Department of Archives and History Online Records Index. And I did a search in that for an ancestor of mine. I descend from the daughter, Rhoda Allen, wife of Thompson W. Allen. They're in the record in the index. This is Rhoda's mother, Amy Pittman's will. So remember, women could own personal property, but not generally land prior to the Civil War. And so there are more female owners of enslaved property, that owners of enslaved people, than we often think about. So don't forget to check the women in your family for all of the types of records, especially if they are widowed. But women could inherit from their fathers and brothers, and often these were entailed so their husbands couldn't benefit from selling the enslaved. This is a record in Marion District, and you will notice that in this, the index does have Seer, parentheses, slave, Tenna, parentheses, slave, Catherine, parentheses, slave. So there are enslaved mentioned in this document. Now, this is a document that was transcribed in the 1930s by the WPA transcriptionists, I believe. And you do want to see if you can find the original handwritten clerk's copy of the document, because sometimes the transcriptionist couldn't read the handwriting and you may have a better chance at it. We can edit photos in a much better way these days to get contrast and things. But Amy Pittman of South Carolina in 1848 is dividing up her property. She is leaving to her daughter, Mary, who was unmarried, her Negro man, Seer, in Mississippi, under the management of her son, Newitt. And so we know a couple things. Seer and Newitt are in Mississippi at this point. And so that gives another place to research. And it outlines that this is for the daughter Mary's use and benefit during her natural life. If she marries, if she has issue, then she gets to maintain ownership of Seer. If not, then returned to the siblings and the labor of the enslaved. The revenue from his labor would be divided between the other children. And then it continues on. Negro woman Tenna, Negro girl Catherine, Negro boy Jerry, Negro girl, it looks like Lenny, and Negro child Seer. So is that a son of the Seer who's in Mississippi? We don't know, but it gives us some information to work with. Another thing to do would be to track down further generation records and to see if we can find the probate for Amy's husband or Amy's father. Haven't had a I can't find her maiden name, so right now I'm still stumped on Amy's father. Hardy is the husband's name, and I still have not found a probate for him, but I haven't checked all of the surrounding counties. So still working on it. But you can see Amy did a mark on this, and there were witnesses, and it says where it was recorded in the deed book. So, this is a better transcription than some. I've seen some that have a lot of mistakes. So, another place to find names of enslaved would be in the Library of Congress, Works Progress Administration Slave Narratives Collection. There is a lot of background information as to the construction of this collection, and that is at the link that is included here. And there are a couple caveats to this collection. Number one, it was largely white people doing the interviews of emancipated slaves. So there was not necessarily an equality and an honesty in a lot of the answers the former enslaved were giving. But it is still a snapshot of their memories of growing up. Now, also, these were done in the 1930s. South Carolina's collection was published in 1936, and slavery ended in 1865. There's been a lot of time between the two dates. So that's another caveat. The other caveat is this is just a very small sampling of narratives. For South Carolina, there are 274 interviews, but 274 is a whole lot less than the number of people who were enslaved in South Carolina, even the ones that were alive in the early 1930s. So this is what one of the transcripts looks like. You can see transcripts are pretty similar when you look at them. But this Ms. Jackson was an ex-slave, 88 years old. So, but you get names of slave-owning families. You get names of other people on the plantation, be enslaved or free or Black or white. So you may get additional names beyond the person who's being interviewed. So this is a fantastic resource that has been growing over the past decade that I've been aware of it. And it is called the Digital Library on American Slavery. This is hosted by the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and it is one of the university projects that I mentioned. So the Digital Library on American Slavery has, at least at this point, 3 primary collections: slave deeds, North Carolina slave notices, which are newspaper ads for runaway slaves, and then race and slavery petitions. And I did a search in here for Rouse, my surname, because I know I have my earliest Rouse ancestor was a plantation overseer for other families. I've got a couple of labor pay stubs and a little lawsuit that was going on about him working for another family. And so, in the first time I went down to Darlington County to research, I had people look at me really funny because they said, well, we've never met a white Rouse. So there is an association with slavery with that surname. And so I always find it helpful, and I'm always curious whether my ancestors will show up in the records. Well, this time didn't find my ancestors directly, but sometimes I do. Freedmen's records, I find one of my ancestors with a labor contract that gets rejected. So, you know, you do what you can. But there were 3 slave deeds, 7 North Carolina slave notices, and 9 records in the race and slavery petitions. So I looked at one of the deeds. This is how they display the deed page. This was in Duplin County, North Carolina in 1818. It is from a bill of sale, book 7A, page 22. And it names the grantor, who was a Solomon Rouse, a grantee, who was Basil Cornegay, and Isaac, who is an enslaved male. And then the document would be there on the right if this wasn't a screenshot, and you can download the image. And you see that the document was added in 2021. And then I clicked on one of the petitions because it was from South Carolina, and it is a petition from the Charleston district in 1800. And it was between February 21st and March 17th, 1800, in equity court. So this was a dispute that was being written about in written testimony. And a William Rouse, who may or may not be related to me, can't find that connection, is seeking a writ of injunction against one Vernon, who sold the petitioner a slave named Sarah, who was a notorious thief and runaway. Rouse explains that he agreed to purchase Sarah for upwards of 50 guineas, expecting her to be good, sound, healthy, and useful. Discovering that she was worth nothing, Rouse asked Vernon to take her back, but Vernon refused, so Rouse confined her in the sugar house, where she was delivered of a child. Rouse then sold Sarah and her child back to Vernon for only about 40 pounds. As Rouse had never paid Vernon for Sarah, Vernon began legal action against Rouse. The petitioner maintains that Vernon perpetrated a suppression of facts, and that the true state of the property, which if they had appeared, would have deterred him from purchasing. Rouse attests that he is not liable for the purchase money and craves the interference of this court on the ground of discovery. So you never know what you're going to find in the record. I have lots of questions. Who fathered that child being one of them? And so you might want to find the original record set, which is at the South Carolina Department of Archives and History. On this one, the original image is not available, but hey, if you know you descend from this Vernon family or that particular Rouse family, then, or have traced Sarah, who is involved in this as not by her choice, then this gives you valuable information. So, another place where you can find names of enslaved and start connecting families is through the International African American Museum's Center for Family History. Now, this may not be the current project. The Restore the Ancestor project was launched in 2019 as they were planning the museum and as the Center for Family History was developing. But I don't see current listings for it on the website. And they are the first, one of the early groups that had mentioned participating in the 10 Million Names project, which I'll get to in a minute. but they are not, as of right now, they are not listed as a contributing partner to the 10 million name project. So I'm not sure what the situation is at this point. But in the Center for Family History at the International African American Museum in Charleston, they are working to record the stories, collect the documents, and help connect African Americans back in time here in the US, and then also working to bridge the slave trade divide. There are digital archives and research collections that you can search from their website, and then you can contribute records to their research collections. They accept photographs, they accept documents. You can scan them, you can bring them to them, and they can scan them. They do accept donations of the family Bible or of the document, but you can also keep copies. So it's just one of those things that you can contribute photos and documents. You can share your story. They have a recording studio that you can share your family stories or memories that were triggered by a visit to their museum or various things. And so it's one way to crowd share the family history that may not have been written down. They do remind you to do not mail unsolicited materials to the museum, and because they cannot be responsible for safe arrival or guarantee their return. They do prefer, if you're going to send something in, send it as an email attachment, so that the original document is not at risk in transportation. So contact them first, ask whether the information that you would like to contribute is what they're looking for. And then there is a spot on the website to contribute online. And this is on the Center for Family History, and you keep scrolling down their page and you'll get to this section. So, one of the largely, it was just a couple people really worked to develop this site. It's called Low Country Africana, and it lowcountryafricana.com, and it focuses on African American genealogy in South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. This is one of those kind of self-developed program websites, and unfortunately doesn't seem to have had a lot of activity since about 2019. I know that they were contributing to the Restore the Ancestors project in cooperation with the International African American Museum. So I'm not sure. And one of the issues with these self-funded, self-produced websites is when the original producer is no longer able to keep things up, you sometimes have problems with legacy. And things change and how information is shared, that kind of thing. So you may find some helpful information, just I don't know that it's as active a site. But they have blogs on here. They have materials for the 3 states. They have a list of South Carolina slaveholders. They've got links to Freedmen's Bureau records, various things. And so you may find some helpful information here. But in the past, it's been a really great site. I just wish they'd been able to keep it up. But if the founder has had health issues or things like that, it does prevent activity on the site. So it's understandable. So this is a project that our library is involved in. It is the Index of Enslaved Persons. It is in this section, the largest part of it is in the Greenville, South Carolina Library digital collection of upstate African American genealogy. And it is in their Content DM site, which is a digital hosting platform. We have our own historical digital collections, which is also a Content DM site. And we are continuing this project with the Union County, South Carolina probate records. By and large, these are lists pulled from indexes pulled from the deed records in the various counties, or sorry, probate records in the various counties. I believe the Free People of Color may also be partially pulled from some deeds, but we are working with the probate records and probate and estate packets. Greenville's original project covered the counties of Greenville, Lawrence, Pendleton and Anderson, Pickens, and Spartanburg. So they did Spartanburg for us. So we're doing Union. And these are lists that can be, it's an Excel spreadsheet basically. And it can be organized by date. It can be sorted by primary enslaver's name. The secondary enslaver's name is the person who is inheriting. So like in my Amy Pittman, if that was in one of the counties that's being covered by this project, the primary enslaver would be Amy Pittman. Seer would be secondary enslaver would be Mary. And that would be, mother and daughter of the relationship between the enslavers. So we're going through the probate records, and we are looking at the transfer from one generation to the next of these enslaved, because that can help know if it went to a daughter who has a different surname because she's married, then that gives you another family's records to search for this enslaved by that first name. There are descriptions, and please note that the descriptions given, the language in these entries is the language of the original documents. They may not be the terms we currently use, but we do what we can. The value given in the probate estimate, and then the estate packet number. So you have to know which county you're looking at, and then you can go to that probate, that estate packet, and you can do all the reading through. Sometimes it's 1 or 2 pages, and sometimes it's 120 pages. So it just depends on how complex and how long that estate happened to be. When an estate hangs around for 20 years, it can get quite lengthy, but often they are waiting for the youngest child to turn 21 or the boy to turn 21 before they settle the estate. So it just depends. But it can give you a lot of very valuable information. That's how I know one set of years that my third great-grandfather was employed as an overseer for a particular family in Darlington and Marlborough counties, because the estate was in probate until the son became 21 and could inherit. So not necessarily easy records to look at, but really helpful records to those needing the information contained in them. So I mentioned the 10 Million Names project. This is a relatively new project that's just, it's been in development for a number of years, but it's just really now gotten online and is starting to get traction. It is hosted by American Ancestors. which is formerly the New England Genealogical and Historical Society up in Boston. It has its separate website, 10millionnames.org, and a partial list of the collaborating organizations. There are more, but American Ancestors, of course, the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, the Community Foundation for the Virgin Islands. So this does cover the Caribbean as well, because there were a lot of slaves going back and forth to the Caribbean over time. The Daughters of the American Revolution, Family Search, the Georgetown Memory Project, Georgetown University had many enslaved who helped build their campus and then were sold to raise money for the campus at one time. And there's been a large project around that, connecting those descendants of those enslaved. The Northeast Slavery Records Index, and many others. So there were some smaller libraries, museums, collections, etc. So this is what their website looks like. And they are working to develop all of the resources for this. As I said, we are in early stages, because when I hit the search, they have 34 databases. So it's not a lot yet. They are only accepting submissions from institutions at this time. And as I said, I have heard that the International African American Museum in Charleston is in conversation to be one of those channels to this project. I just don't know where that stands and when they update their website, because the agreement could have been made, but it's just not on the website yet. So we'll see. But they have 34 databases, a lot of them from Boston and New England, but also Alabama deaths between 1908 and 1974, Alabama marriages, Black Loyalist directory from 1783 to 1788. So there were African Americans who fought for the British and those who fought for the Patriots. The Daughters of the American Revolution, Patriots of Color database, 1712 to 1888. So there are quite a few. Godfrey Memorial Library from Middletown, Connecticut has manumissions in their collections between 1774 and 1823. So manumissions, those freedom papers that have come into the library's collection. So there are a lot of different partners in this, and this list will grow. The positive is there is funding for this project, and there is longevity for the project to continue, and to have web space and all of that kind of thing over time. So, something to keep your eye on. This is not one of the subscription databases of American Ancestors. This is one of the free collections. This is supposed to always be a free collection for researchers. That is the intent of it. Hopefully they will be able to keep that up. So another one of those university-based websites is this Peoples of the Historical Slave Trade at enslaved.org. And it began as a humanities project of the University of Michigan and uses many databases, connects a lot of dots. Again, this is not necessarily a genealogy website. It is a academic research based website, but you can find a lot of good information on there. So again, this is growing, but it has backing from a bunch of very big private and public foundations. So I think it's here to stay. Plus, the University of Michigan, I don't think is going to drop its support of its professors. Um, they also have a Journal of Slavery and Data Preservation, and that's original data sets about the lives of enslaved Africans and their descendants drawn from the documents produced from the 15th to early 20th centuries. And that is also where they're getting the data contributed to enslaved.org. So there's a lot of data in here. You just have to think a little broader than just name searching. However, if you do a name search, because, I went to search and put Rouse in there just to see what they have. And there were 30 results with the name Rouse. There's a Nicholas Rouse here and a Nathaniel Rouse is the second one. Nicholas's date of 1701 in London. Nathaniel is a date of 1700 with London, Jamaica, Gold Coast. And so I clicked on Nicholas, and he was a vessel owner of the Thomas and Phoebe. So he was a sea captain, but his ships were transporting slaves in the Triangle Trade. So you also found an enslaved man named James Rouse, and runaway from John Coriel of Amwell in New Jersey, the 22nd day of November last at Albany, a Negro man named James Rouse had on soldier's clothing, but pretty bare, is lame in one of his knees and a scar on his upper lip. And the description goes on. This is an advertisement for the disappearance of James Rouse. In 1748, so early. Slavery was still legal in New Jersey for a lot longer than 1748. So, again, also, don't just limit yourself to what we think of these days as the slaveholding states. Just a reminder, we're talking a lot about online resources, but there are also published volumes that can be immensely helpful. And some of these are archival resources, so one-of-a-kind diaries and journals. We have a edited, annotated version of The Piedmont Farmer, the Journals of David Golightly Harris, 1855 to 1870, edited by Philip Racine. David Golightly Harris was a local landowner. When he went off to serve in the Civil War, his wife continued the journals. So they are extremely rich in what was happening in Spartanburg County in the area during that time period from 1855 to 1870. It lists people by name, be they neighbors or occasionally the enslaved and others. Talks about local events and happenings. What was going on the national scene affecting them locally as farmers. So diaries and journals when you can find them. And if you can't find them for your own person, you may be looking for neighbors, because you never know. They may mention something for the neighboring farm or plantation. There are also account books of enslaved persons being purchased and sold. These ledgers don't usually have a lot of context around them. It's lists of names and sale prices, dates of transaction, those types of things. But we have a published book again, but from a manuscript locally. of a backcountry slave trader, William James Smith's enterprise from 1844 to 1854. Again, by Philip Racine and his wife, Frances Melton Racine. And they have context for a lot about the slave trade, particularly here in the upstate, as well as lists of the enslaved who were traded by William James Smith. And so sometimes you have to get beyond the who was the owner to how did they come into the owner's possession. So, and these are just examples of 2 resources. You may find more in different places, different families. Do look at the local level for the geographic area that you think your people were in. So, where can I contribute information I have or find? So back in July or August last summer, when I was coming up with what I was presenting on this series, I plan October through June in one cycle. I was convinced there were more places that you could contribute your research to. Well, not so much. Some of the websites have disappeared altogether. So, but we're going to talk about some ways to contribute to help those who may be descended from enslaved persons. We're planting those seeds. We're trying to plant seeds so others have something to harvest. So one site that you can contribute information to is Afrogenius, the African American and African Ancestor Genealogy, afrogenius.org. I did have some problems opening some of the places on this website, so your mileage may vary. I haven't tried it not at the library. Something in the spam filter, something in the stuff was just getting mixed up. So, but this is what the website looks like. It has some support from Mississippi State. So I am hopeful that there may be ongoing support in the background. And if you click on the, I think it's in the records, there is a slave data collection. And that includes wills, inventories, Bible records, slave manifests, and more. And they list some of the more recent additions to this. You can browse the slave data by surname in that left-hand column. You can browse it by state. And then you can see the records kept, and there is a form to contribute things to the site. Again, I don't know how active the site is, and I think I just saw a comment that a recent webinar Jesse attended mentioned the site hadn't been updated in quite some time. Something may have happened to the website administrator. And that is one of those situations where you need a team that all has access if you're going to do something of this nature so that there is longevity. Have a plan. So thank you for that update, Jesse. There are some other places that you can contribute information. I mean, obviously, Family Search, do tree entries. The problem with how we do our family tree sites is they're based on family connections. I've recently been looking into some software for that they use for one name and one place studies. and that allows multiple relationships. So you can, in a one place study, you can talk about these are the neighbors, these are the people around. You don't have to have that family relationship. We're looking into potentially using some of that information, or that type of software for mapping people named in a diary that we've acquired at our library. So you may want to think in terms of that in a location kind of base. But in genealogy, the resources we have at our fingertips are the family websites. So tree entries on Family Search, on Ancestry, adding the enslaved into your tree. Just be very careful that you're not artificially putting parents and child together. If you have to have a link it to somebody to add the name to the tree, definitely make sure you unlink that relationship, or it's going to really cause issues. So it's a bit of a thing, but you can put the information there, or build a tree for the enslaved if you've got multiple generations, a little treelet that is public that can be helpful. Put your sources on that you found this information in the probate of this person, or deeds, or sales contracts, or whatever. It's easier if you happen to have a blog, although I mean, okay, a podcast these days. Blogs were hot, 15, 20 years ago, 10, 20 years ago. I still follow some blogs. But if you're going to do a podcast or whatever, you can talk about this information. You can share this information. You can do the story, tell the story, get the information out there as best you can. Your local library or archive, particularly if that is local to the place where the enslaved were, these families, these multi-generational organisms on piece of property that interrelate in so many different ways. We accept donations of organized family papers, business papers, club papers, things like that. Even roughly organized is better than just the random box of mixed whatever it is. If you at least have a topic in a box, that helps us. Not everybody has processing archivists who can spend time sorting the papers. So the more organized you can make it before you donate it, the better off we are. But then we can add finding aids to that, and people can come find it. Some things we put up on our historical digital collections that are findable, keyword searchable. We have an archival catalog system where we can put the finding aid in, and it's searchable by keywords and names and subjects. And so we are not unique in libraries doing this. And so your local library, maybe the larger library in the next county, is the better, more secure place. Or it could be an archive at a local college or university. I've talked before, in my hometown in Virginia, the clerk of court, Chaz, he's a history major, was a history major, and he has worked with other clerks of court up and down the Shenandoah Valley, and they are working on a combined site called Histories Along the Blue Ridge. And they are trying to get record sets put together for these various counties. It started with Rockingham County, Shenandoah County bought on, Augusta County is their newest, and that was the big county that a lot of these other ones formed off of. And so there's a lot of rich history there. And so it's taking time. They have James Madison University Masters of History students interning and doing projects every semester, a couple of them. And it is fantastic to watch that project grow. And again, funding is only, the site is only as good as the funding. And so, fortunately, they have some government grants that are supporting some of that. James Madison is supporting the hosting of the site. So, I trust that that project will be around for a while. So it's just one of those situations where future planning really does make a difference. So, other places that you can help is volunteering for some of these projects. These are just a couple of example projects that I'm aware of. The Library of Virginia has what they call From the Page, and this is their transcription program. So they've right now, I think it's a lot of World War II stuff, but different projects for different record sets, trying to get them indexed and transcribed and searchable so that people can use them better than just scanned stuff. In the age of AI, yes, we are experimenting with using AI to read handwriting. It's still not there yet. Reading typewritten stuff is better quality, but then somebody does have to do some editing and fixing of whatever the AI has done. Um, it's coming. It's coming. And that will certainly speed up all of this digitized materials. But at some point, there's eyes need to be on it. But their transcription program is online and you can do it from anywhere. Family Search also has indexing and transcription projects ongoing. I in large part, I think they have shifted to editing what the AI has transcribed, but you still have to read the cursive writing. You still have to be able to understand the record that you're helping interpret. National Archives and Records Administration has their Citizen Archivist project. Right now, they are working with Revolutionary War documents as one of the projects. There are plenty. They've got millions of documents that need to be better processed for online. Those are just the ones that are already digitized. They've got a whole lot more that they haven't been able to digitize yet because there's a backlog. So again, Citizen Archivist at National Archives is great. Your local library, to you or to where your family member lived, it's easier for you to get into the library in person to volunteer. We have digitization projects, we have transcription projects, we have organizing of collections projects, simple projects. We've got a pamphlet file project of newspaper clippings that need to be subjects reduced from a folder that's 3.5 inches deep of newspaper clippings to 4 or 5 folders that are better organized so a researcher can find what they're looking for. And we need help processing through those collections, and then we will get those into our online archival search system. So your local library is going to have a variety of projects. Some, like us, focused into local history and genealogy, others not as much. You may find the neighboring library system has more, but ask. If your ancestors lived somewhere distant, check. We've been digitizing the early deed books. One of the things that we need to do is either get abstracted information with keywords so they're at least keyword searchable, or get some transcriptions done of all of those deed book A through Z. And we're in the doubles. We're, I think, a deed book EE that we're scanning now. So there are projects. Some of those might be able to be done from a distance. You never know until you ask if you can help, if you have the skill set and the interest. So we do have some how-to guides for your general research in African American genealogy. These are going to be a little bit more general than just trying to find the names of the enslaved and connecting them to the people who owned them, where they ended up after they were emancipated. But Black Roots, Robin Foster, My Best Genealogy Tips, Finding Formerly Enslaved Ancestors. She's here in South Carolina. It's a fabulous little book. Genealogy at a Glance, African American Genealogy Research. That is an older Genealogy at a Glance laminated folder. Still some good technique in it, but some of the resources are not as up to date. Genealogist's Guide to Discovering Our African American Ancestors by Smith. Finding a Place Called Home, A Guide to African American Genealogy and Historical Identity by Woodter. So these are in our collection. You may find others in your local library's collection as well. The two handouts are our handout for researching your American ancestor and the resource list for this program with these websites on it. If you are watching this recording and can't get that handout, please contact the Kennedy Room at the Spartanburg County Public Libraries. If you go to spartanburglibraries.org, contact us, choose local history, and that will get to our department. We have a K-room at infodepot.org email address. Contact the Kennedy Room. Contact information is on the website. So we appreciate that. And are there questions?
Yes, there are.
Awesome. I figured there would be.
Jesse Krantz has one. Do you see it on your chat?
Let me get to that screen. Okay. How far up is it? Let's see.
It's all the way down to the bottom. You just need to scroll to the bottom. I can read it to you, though.
That would be great.
It says, are you aware of records that are designated enslaved persons' sale records, like notices or receipts that are from slaveholder to slaveholder? If so, what would they be called?
They are usually in the deed records in a particular county or place, because that deeds register the sale of property. Unfortunately, in the past, many clerks of court, most clerks of court, have ignored those entries because they are dealing with the real property, the land records. And it was also easier in the 20th century to skip over those entries. That way people didn't know they were there. There may also be at the county level sales receipt books where these sales could be registered. So I have not done a check to see if any of the backcountry slave trader, any of the enslaved in that book were actually registered for sale in Spartanburg County. That's a good question, and that's for further research for me to know the records of the county. And so I would look first in deed records, and I would also at the county level ask the Register of Deeds office if they have any books or have seen mentions of this. Because there may be a volume back in a corner, or they may tell you, oh, we turned that over to the state archive years ago. So, but sales books, receipt books, writ books, sometimes in the early period, WRIT, like sheriff's writ books are sales of property that would go to pay court fees and things. You may find sales of enslaved in those as well. These are types of records that are very poorly indexed at this time. Hopefully more of those will be scanned and digitized, and hopefully AI can help us get that massive information available. But yeah, I think that those would be the types of things I would ask for. Um,
Okay, the second question coming in is asking about, in your example, you showed a will. Can you share the information where I can find it? Some of those names sounded familiar.
oh, good, we may be cousins. So let's see if I can get, let's see. How about if I stop sharing my screen? Hi, everybody. I can now see you. And let me see if I can pull up that website. And my computer's going to think for a minute.
Was it a will that you showed of your ancestor?
Yes.
Okay, that was at really close to the beginning, wasn't
Yes.
it? I think that
Yep.
was one of the first examples you showed.
Yep. And for whatever reason, my computer is being very, very slow.
So if she's
Department
if
of
she's
Archives and
looking to see that, is there a place she can go to see that
Yep.
online, or does she have to see it in person?
Nope. That one was online. And let's see if I can pull that over here and go there and reshare that screen. Let's see if this works. Sorry, I got to find Zoom again. So share screen, and I want to share screen too. Okay. Does your screen now say Department of Archives and History?
No, it's still showing everybody.
Huh. Oh, I selected it. I just didn't hit share. Did that work?
Yes.
Awesome. So on the South Carolina Department of Archives and History, under research and genealogy, I think it's the SC ArcCat. Nope, it is not ArcCat. So this is the problem. They've got so many different chunks of their thing. Let's see. Online Records Index, of course, it's the top thing. But they have Explore here, and I usually go take me to the search page because you can do a couple of things there. You can build your search there, and the record that I had was Pittman Amy, and it does pre-populate names that they know are in their system. And so this is Amy Pittman of Marion District, Rhoda Allen, who is my second great grandmother, Thompson Allen, her husband, Neil Carmichael, and Hardy Gaddy. So there are the Gaddys were witnesses to this. So yeah, but you can search any name that has been mentioned and indexed in that site. And so yeah. And
Okay,
most of
Charity, let me
this,
stop you to ask,
yeah,
if she's looking for an enslaved person,
uh-huh.
would she look under the name or would she look under another? Okay, so you would just,
So if I type in seer
yeah,
slave, it pulls up in that particular record, but if seer was in other um
in other records, it would be,
yeah,
there'd be other items there.
yeah. So let's see. Catherine is probably yeah, there are 2 pages of results that have Catherine as an enslaved name. So there's Catherine is in a list of merchants of Charlestown, Louis Dudark of St. James and Berkeley County. So yeah. So
Okay.
if they've been listed in any record that is in this collection, and they're adding stuff to it every day. Not all of them have images, but a lot of them have images as well these days.
Okay, so like I'm working on the enslaved record, or not records, but the
Union County project.
yeah, the Union County project. So if oh, how do I say this? Like, I mean, she wouldn't, people don't automatically know the ancestor who had slaves,
Right.
nor made, and it could also be that, oh, wait a minute. Okay, it says that wasn't the record. It was a record that showed a John Mobley.
Hmm. Let's see. Trying to think which other.
Sorry, I was under the impression it was the first will that you brought up.
Let's see. Let me go back and see which one it was.
And then someone else, while you're looking for that,
Uh-huh.
oh, is that it?
What?
Hold on.
There was
I
an
will.
Adeline Jackson in the slave narratives. Um, no, that was Rouse, Cornick, and Isaac. Um, and the William Rouse and the Vernon and Sally or Sarah. Let's see.
Okay, someone else was asking too. Can we assume the last name of the enslaved found in the records is usually that of the slave owner?
Often, but not always.
Okay.
So, start with the names of the known owners. You may find that the most recent owner at time of emancipation was an in-law, like a son-in-law's name or something like that. And the former enslaved may take that final owner's name, but they may take a previous owner's name.
Okay.
They may take a neighbor's name because they liked them better. So yeah, it does, that one does depend. Um
Okay, so the lady that asked the first question about
yeah,
the will,
uh-huh.
she says Jackson, it was a Jackson was a slave narrative.
Oh, yes. Okay. So
Okay.
that was
Sorry it's taken us so long.
yeah, that's okay. Um that was in the Federal Writers Project. These are online at the Library of Congress.
Ah,
So if you go to I would just Google Library of Congress slave narrative or WPA slave narrative, and that will get you into that part of the collection. And there are pages and pages, and then the books are digitized. We actually have the South Carolina books, all 274 of those in our collection printed on the shelf. Um, because before they were easily available online on Library of Congress's website, that was how you found them, or you went to DC to look for them. So yeah, Adeline Jackson, project 1655 of the WPA project, but that is volume 14, South Carolina, part 3, Jackson to Quattlebaum. They're divided into 4 volumes. So
okay. All
um
right.
yay.
Unless somebody else pops up in the next second or two, I think we've addressed all the questions. I'm gonna look
Awesome.
back just to make sure. Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Thank you so much, and I hope I'll see you next month for looking at women, and I'll have some really fun concrete examples of some of my spinster great aunts. They've been fun to research, but I'll have other records for women as well. Thank you so
Wonderful.
much.
Uh-huh.
And we can stop recording.